Gabe. So my name is Sue Ditta, and I'm the Executive Director of the Electric City Culture Council. And the man who's really in control of everything, Gabe Pollock, is here with me. Gabe is the program coordinator and the research lead at EC3, and that only very narrowly describes all of the amazing things he does. And on behalf of EC3, we want to welcome you and everybody who joins us tonight for the workshop. Thank you for coming. And to say thank you for your interest in the Poet Laureate Program. Before we go any further, we'd like to acknowledge that even though we're meeting virtually, most of us are here in Peterborough, and this is land that is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, and they include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We feel very grateful to be here, to be able to work here in Peterborough and Nogojinguanon. And we want to acknowledge and remember that these peoples have been the stewards and the caretakers of these lands from time immemorial, and that we support them in this work and pledge to continue our journey on the path of truth and reconciliation. And I'm seeing a very nice photograph there. I don't know what it is. Angela's in the center of my screen now. But I think Gabe is going to pull up the PowerPoint.
I can do that.
And again, before we go any further, I'd like to send out a big thank you to the number of poets in this community and spoken word artists in this community who worked very hard to get City Council to approve the position of Poet Laureate. And the mayor in particular, who helped us get the funding through the city for this program, and to the people who served on the advisory committee to put the program together. Everyone was incredibly kind and generous with their time, and none of it would have been possible without all of those folks. Our special guests tonight are John Hedderwick, I hope, will join us. He was on the advisory committee and played a really crucial role in the development of the nomination and everything to do with that application style process and the criteria. Wes Ryan and Bill Templeman, who some of you will know through his Politics and Pints show on Trent Radio, and the other two you will know as very active poets in our community. And Alicia Rabash, lost everybody now, is here tonight as well. And Alicia sits on our board of directors. She's a publisher and a writer and a visual artist, and we're thrilled to have someone from the very dedicated EC3 board here with us tonight. If you have questions, and I can see 3 things in the chat room already, I'm going to ask you to stay on mute. Okay.
Yeah, if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A period kind of at the end.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, people, this will all be available. We'll do a special social media post driving people to this presentation on our website, and it'll be in a couple of different places. In the Poet Laureate, on the Poet Laureate button, and on the Professional Development Workshops button. You'll be able to find it in both places. So Gabe, I think we can go forward a little bit because we've done the territorial acknowledgements. For those of you who aren't familiar with the tradition of Poet Laureate, I just wanted to quickly say it's something that goes back, as far as we can tell, to medieval times. It was revived again in Renaissance times. Many, many cultures have something similar to a poet laureate, someone who captures the zeitgeist of the time, who can speak to the histories and identities and experiences of a people or of a place. And what I think the folks that sort of started the discussions about this program recognized, and certainly EC3 did, and we did quite a bit of research, that the position of Poet Laureate is kind of experiencing a revival all across Canada and at every level. So there is a national Poet Laureate, they exist at the provincial level, and more now we're seeing municipalities appoint Poet Laureates. So I'm really thrilled that Peterborough has stepped up. Although this is a pilot project, we feel confident we'll be able to carry it on. To acknowledge the fact that Peterborough has an outstanding cohort of spoken word artists, page and print poets, and a credible literary tradition that has developed over a number of years in our city. We want to honor that. And we want to honor the role that the arts can play in building a better, brighter, more vital, and more memorable community and culture here in Peterborough. Okay, Gabe. You know, I think that there is a kind of grace notes that a poet laureate can bring to a city. I have had the great good fortune of knowing poet laureates, including Dennis Lee, Norbezi Phillips, and Dion Brandt. These are people who are incredible artists. They have such a sense of presence and a sense of depth and experience. And I keep saying the word grace that they bring to things. So they are folks who can say sometimes tough things, memorable things. They really bring something unique and different to civic occasions. And they capture something important about the history of our experience in this place so that it just doesn't disappear into the ether. There is a more recent tradition that Poet Laureate programs focus on the value of literacy and the literary arts by presenting this understanding of our life and the place we live through the literary arts. And certainly this Poet Laureate program hopes to do that as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. And we can go on to the next one. Hi, Tammy. Okay. So there is a sense of it being an honorary position that is created, like the chancellor of a university. That's the kind of thing I could think of to compare it to. Almost all Poet Laureate programs that we did research on it's always a scenario in which the Poet Laureate is nominated by someone else. And given the traditions of the literary community in Peterborough, we wanted it to be a program that would be very welcoming to both print, page, and spoken word artists. And it's officially launched just at the end of last month because it was International Poetry Month, and we'll kind of try and keep that focus on it going forward. So the term will actually officially run from June the 30th, 2021 to April 30th, 2022. So each Poet Laureate will wrap up during International Poetry Month. Yay. This is formally a program of the city of Peterborough. It is a pilot program, but EC3 is administering it. And we get our guidance and direction from the city's Arts, Culture, and Heritage Advisory Committee. So we wanted there to be, as there is in almost every city, an arm's length relationship between city council, city staff, and the actual administration of the program. In some cities, it's administered by the Arts Council, in some kind of coalitions of literary festivals and bookshops and programs at different universities. In our case, it's the Arts Council who's organizing and administering the program. And that means it will meet all of the standards of most public funding bodies in terms of arm's length, confidentiality, conflict of interest, and accessibility, inclusion, and diversity. That's what we're aiming for. So here we're getting into the nitty-gritty. It's a one-year term, and there'll be an honorarium of $2,000 provided by the city of Peterborough. The Poet Laureate will be expected to write 4 new works, 2 of them to be presented at City Council and 2 at other important civic occasions, but they could be at the library. That's something that we'll work together with city staff and the mayor on, where those other 2 could be. There'll also be opportunities, we assume, based on the research that we've done, for the Poet Laureate to do other events as a Poet Laureate, and we'll help the Poet Laureate work out payment for those if other organizations want to have the Poet Laureate be part of their program. I think I've covered quite a lot of the things on this slide number 9. But one of the things I wanted to mention was that we see the Poet Laureate as being an advocate, and more importantly, an ambassador for the arts in general, particularly during COVID-19. And we don't know how much longer the closure of theaters and exhibition spaces and presentation and concert spaces will continue, but we really want the Poet Laureate to help the general public be aware of the arts in general and the important role the arts play in Peterborough and in the vitality and the quality of our life here in Peterborough. Okay, Gabe. So lots of different language appears in different Poet Laureate programs. The idea that a Poet Laureate contributes to civic identity and placemaking, and the idea that the histories that we're familiar with from books and brochures and pamphlets, there's never only one history, and a Poet Laureate has a really unique opportunity to make the public aware of different histories, of different identities, varied perspectives, multiple communities, and they can do it all from their own perspective and open up the public eye and the public mind to different ways of knowing and understanding our municipality. They can create markers. This is something we'll talk to the Poet Laureate about whether or not, as a part of a legacy project, that we might have a website or we might publish a chapbook. There are a number of things that we could do, but I think it's really important to think about the fact that a Poet Laureate may look at history, it may look at contemporary experience, or a Poet Laureate's work might explore the future, and that we want whatever happens with the Poet Laureate during the year of their tenure to be something that we're able to maintain and that people can still reference and experience even after their term is over. Thanks, Gabe. Just before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to Jeff Macklin, one of EC3's designers, for the gorgeous logo that he created for this program. I just love this brand identity. So as I said, there will be certain things that are absolutely required as part of taking up the mantle of the Poet Laureate. There'll be 4 new works and 4 public readings once a year to City Council during National Poetry Month. The other ones we'll have to work out, but it could quite possibly be at the opening of City Council. When I say opening, the council usually takes a break in July and August and then sort of comes back in September. And there may be other civic occasions or community events that the Poet Laureate would really like to be part of, and we'll work with them to make those opportunities and those moments possible. It'll be EC3's job to liaise with city staff and the Poet Laureate, make sure things are going smoothly, make sure people have as many opportunities as they want to have. And we'll do that formally on a quarterly basis with the staff and with the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Advisory Committee. And at the end of the poet's term, we'll hope that they will ask for a written report on their experience and any recommendations or suggestions that they have. There's also a tradition of there being a legacy project. I mentioned the possibility of a website or a chapbook. YouTube channel. There's any number of things that we could do. Some poet laureates develop scholarship funds for literacy. There's all kinds of things, and that's be something exciting to talk to the person who's chosen about. And by tradition, the poet laureate would serve on the following year's selection committee. That's good, Gabe. If you have questions, please put them in the chat room and we'll come back to you. So EC3 worked very, very closely with the advisory committee to create all of the material that you see in the program guidelines and information, and to develop the nomination process. We'll facilitate the selection process, including appointing the selection committee and managing its work. And we'll provide administrative support, as I mentioned, to the poet laureate when they're chosen, in terms of, you know, getting the projects off the ground and being sure everybody's happy with at least the 4 official presentations that the poet laureate will make. And what we have worked with the city staff to coordinate the announcement event. Everything you can imagine is a little bit more quiet and reserved than we had initially hoped for because of COVID-19. We'd hoped to launch the program and give the award actually at the May 2020 Peterborough Arts Awards. So who knows what things will be like in September. If the city council is meeting for real, the poet laureate will be able to be present. And Brendan Wedley, who's the communications director for the city of Peterborough, has just been fabulous in promoting this event. So we'll have some sort of an announcement, and then something again when the poet laureate does their first poem. So COVID or not, we'll make it a great moment. So here comes some more important nitty-gritty on the eligibility. I mentioned this at the beginning. Artists must be nominated by someone else. There are no self-nominations. These are pretty straightforward standard eligibility criteria for many of EC3's programs, and I think pretty much for any poet laureate program that we looked at. You have to be 18 years of age or older, a current resident of the city of Peterborough or Peterborough County, and the nomination form does ask you to provide some supporting documentation, a tax bill or an oil bill or anything that has your address on it. You must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. You have to be prepared to accept the responsibilities of the position. So don't ask someone to nominate you if you're planning to be out of the country for part of the time, or you don't think your health is going to be up to those 4 public presentations. And because it isn't just a research position or an artist in residence position, you are expected to present your work in public. Way we've shaped it is to say you have to be accustomed to citizen engagement and community outreach. So you will be expected to work with different people that you're presenting your poetry to. We do have the criteria for what constitutes professionally published. This was something the committee spent a long time and labored long and hard over, and that'll come up next. And we'll ask your nominator to argue a case in front of the jury, and that's what that nomination form is about. And what their letter has to do is to make a case that you've made a significant contribution to poetry or spoken word arts in the literary life of our municipality or the surrounding region. And by the surrounding region, we mean Peterborough County, including Curve Lake and Hiawatha nations. Thanks, Gabe. So if most of your practice is in print or page poet, you can choose which one you want to come in as. The assessment of the poet's work as published text will be at the discretion of the selection committee. So if there are nominations that come in with support material that we're not sure about, we'll move them forward to an eligibility meeting of the selection committee, and it'll be that committee that makes the final decision. about whether they're eligible or not. And don't forget, you can find all of this information again on our website, or if you're having trouble with the website, don't hesitate to email Gabe or email me. Gabe, I can't remember if we put our emails at the end of this, but we'll give them if we didn't.
We've got an email at the end, yeah.
Thanks. I should have known. One book of poetry published by a literary or trade publisher, or one self-published book of poetry professionally marketed and distributed. And if you're asking what's professionally marketed or distributed and you're not sure, I hope you'll still get nominated and we'll put it in front of the selection committee. Or 2 chapbooks. So if you don't have a full book that you self-published, but you have 2 chapbooks, something smaller, something similar, as long as you've put them together and gotten them out there to the public, we're prepared to put them in front of the selection committee for eligibility. Or a body of work that demonstrates professional commitment and proficiency. So what we wanted to do is create a big enough space to include things that were published or presented in any kind of literary or professional markets. Alicia, what's the name of the zine thing that ArtSpace does? Oh, she might not.
Sure, I know. That ArtSpace does?
Yeah, it's often at ArtSpace. Pardon?
Book and Zine Fest. It's on my
That's
wall.
it. That's it. I think it got so big they had to move it to the library last time.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you've been present there with your chapbooks, if you've published broadsheets, if you've contributed to an anthology or been published in a literary magazine, all of those things collectively could equal having a book published or publishing the chapbooks. Again, if you're worried about that, give me a call, or just go ahead with your nomination and we'll take a look at it and we'll put it in front of the selection committee. I think that the selection committee, I want to let you know now, will be a group primarily of your peers in the arts. And those are folks that are very familiar with what it means to work and be a living poet in this time, or a spoken word artist. So they'll be the perfect people to make those final decisions. Thanks, Gabe. Number 20. So if you're thinking of nominating someone, or if you're a poet and you want someone to nominate you, please tell your nominator that they should talk about your involvement in the poetry or literary arts community or spoken word community, and that they should talk about your publication history. And you'll see that you are going to be asked to provide samples of your work that the selection committee can read. So the selection process, it's a 2-step process. The first part will be reviewing the nomination letters and the letters of intent from the poets and the support material they provide. That will create a short list of 3 people, and then there'll be an interview process with the selection committee to select the final candidate. Thanks, Gabe. If you're primarily a spoken word artist, you must have a body of work that demonstrates a professional commitment and proficiency in the field of spoken word poetry. And again, finally, if it seems unclear to us, we'll ask the selection committee in an eligibility meeting to make that determination. And there's a number of things that could demonstrate that you have that proficiency, and that's going to come up on the next slide. If you have a recorded studio album, participation on a spoken word team, including touring and competing for at least 2 years, 3 curated feature performance sets of at least 15 minutes each. So we'll be looking for a video or some kind of demonstration that actually happened. Print materials, you can provide print materials, including chapbooks and anthology contributions, and that your nominator can speak to your commitment to the spoken word arts community through your teaching or creating performance spaces for artists. What's your engagement in spoken word here in Peterborough? Thanks, Gabe. Yep, so it's very similar to the page or print poets. Ask your nominator to talk about your history and involvement with the spoken word community, and make sure, we'll go over the support materials in detail, but make sure that you include links to any audio tracks or videos that the selection committee can listen to or view online. I know that I've chatted with John since we announced the program, and we looked again together at the final guidelines and information document, and all of the support material that was required. When we were going over that, John said that we should be prepared for a lot of nominations. So that means people who are being nominated and their nominees need to keep in mind that it's going to be a tough competition. Thanks, Gabe. Nominators, they also have to be residents of Peterborough or Peterborough County. They have to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents and be 18 years of age over. They have to know the artist. That may sound unusual, but we've gone through all kinds of crazy things like that before. So make sure that it's someone who you know and who knows your work well. They have to be familiar with their work, with your work, and they have to be able to comment knowledgeably on the nominee's ability to undertake the duties of a poet laureate. Now, this is a really important one. Your nominator cannot be related to you through family, through relationships, or employment connections. And we really spell this out in detail in the program guide and the information section with a conflict of interest guidelines, several paragraphs. It's the same one that governs the jurors or the selection committee. So please make sure that you're free and clear of any conflict of interest when you choose your nominator. And any nominator can only nominate one artist per year for the Poet Laureate. So I know for Arts Awards, we often have people nominating 2 or 3, and that's fine. For the Poet Laureate, you can only nominate one person. So if you're gearing up to get your nomination package ready, here's what you need to do. And I think I mentioned that it's a 2-part process, and the first step is getting the nomination package in and submitted. So we've tried to make that as easy as possible, because we found a lot of people had problems with fillable PDFs, and other people had problems with portals. So this is a Word document, and you can complete the document on your desktop and then just attach it to an email along with your support material. If that is a really big problem for you, let us know. We can print out a paper version of the nomination forms and the guidelines and try and get it to you in person. During COVID-19, especially with a full lockdown still in place, that's tough. Normally we have these things available at the library and the art gallery and all different places downtown, but we were able to make some things like that available during the Arts Week Shift 2 grant process, and we'll endeavor to do that again for anyone who really wants to be nominated. We can get a paper submission to you, and you can mail it to us. We really go so much better if people can do it electronically. So you'll find on our website a copy of the Poet Laureate nomination form, and it has to be signed and completed. It's a .doc or doc, you know what I'm trying to say, .docs format. Your signature can be an electronic signature that you've scanned and plonked on there. And if it comes from your personal email, that'll be fine. A professional CV that demonstrates the nominee's achievements and their formal and informal training. So we are asking you to provide a CV or a resume that, you know, isn't just a generic one for any job that you apply for, but is one that you've developed specifically for your art practice or for this competition in particular, and some kind of confirmation of your residence. If you're having trouble with that, please let us know. If a driver's license, a property tax bill, a utilities bill, if none of those will work, we'll work with you until we find something where an outside party has confirmed your address, your name and address. A nomination letter from the nominator, maximum 500 words. So take it seriously that it's 500 words. I've been writing grant applications for about 35 years, and I hate having my words limited. You don't have to have 500 words, but the 500 words is suggested because the selection committee, will only have so much time, and if they have to read too much, that can be a problem. So 500 words is about 2 pages for most people. And there's pretty detailed description here of what the nominator needs to address. So once again, they need to address the artist's achievements, what their contribution is to the professional practice. Make sure your nominator looks at the assessment criteria so that they're talking to the selection committee about the things the selection committee is going to be asked to assess and analyze and make a judgment and a determination about. Why is this artist worthy of the appointment of Poet Laureate? Why would it be fabulous to see them in that position? What would they bring to the position and what the position can offer in our community? Thanks, Gabe. Okay, and then this is where the poet comes in themselves. It's a letter of intent, and we gave you up to 750 words there. What are your goals and objectives as a poet laureate? And that's where you get to talk from your heart and your head and your soul about why you want to be poet laureate and what you think you, as an individual artist, could in particular achieve in that position. What would you bring to it? What would you do? What would make you a great candidate? What's your interest in serving and what's your capacity to hold a public position? I don't know if you know Dion Brandt and Norbezi Phillips. I worked with them a lot, both of them in the 90s. They're pretty kick-ass people. And yet they came to these very distinguished positions and wrote magnificent works that address really pressing issues and experiences in a way that made people pay attention without being alienated. They're remarkable examples of people who really excelled in this position. How would you engage the public? So beyond the 4 presentations at civic events, are there other things that you can think of to do that would engage the public, that would get your work and your ideas and your vision as a poet laureate out there into the broader public? Of course, because it is the literary arts, the city is hoping there will be some engagement with the Peterborough Public Library. We've had some preliminary conversations with the library, and I think they're very keen on working with the Poet Laureate in any number of ways. But there are other organizations, both public and other not-for-profit organizations in the city that Poet Laureates can work with. And particularly, we felt that during COVID-19, can the applicant think of ways to use digital engagement and social media platforms to interact with the community and advocate for the literary arts and for their vision of our city? So if you're a printer, a page poet, obviously the committee is going to want to read your work. So they're looking for 5 examples of work from the past 10 years as outlined in the eligibility criteria and the support material. And then we ask you also to submit a short artist bio. So that's different from your CV, and that it's something concise and small that we can use immediately if you're selected or if you're shortlisted in promoting you and your work. And a lot of you will have that on hand. Thanks, Gabe. So I don't think I have too much to add in terms of the review and assessment. The selection committee, there will be probably 5 members. And they will receive your materials. They'll receive conflict of interest guidelines, confidentiality guidelines, and our program and information guidelines in advance of a meeting. And there'll be a small, we hope, eligibility meeting, and then a larger selection committee process. I'm calling them jurors because we'll carry it on like as if it was a jury that might be making multiple recommendations. But this committee will be responsible for choosing 3 finalists for the short list. And those 3 finalists will then come back and meet probably again virtually with the selection committee for an interview. And then finally, the selection committee will select the poet laureate, and that will go forward to the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Advisory Committee for final approval. And we'll notify the shortlisted nominees and let them know when the interview is and what's required in the interview process. And then the final person will be notified by EC3, and the city will make the final announcement of who the poet laureate is. Thanks, Gabe. And I can't imagine that the committee will not find a suitable candidate, but just in case, you need to know the committee has the right not to make an appointment. Forgot to kill my phone here. That's good. Thanks, Gabe. Okay, this is a really important one. What will this selection committee be looking at? Your community and professional standing. What have you contributed to the field? And what's been the impact of your work? So your nominator needs to address that, and certainly your support material will address that. They'll be asked to assess the quality of your work. So that's the excellence in practice. What is that committee's assessment of the artistic merit of your work and the quality of your work? One of the reasons we'll have a 5-person committee is to try and make sure we have very diverse points of view coming in to weigh in on what constitutes that quality or that artistic merit. We want to be able to say that the candidate has demonstrated significant and outstanding achievement. Citizen engagement. Based on your submission and your letter of intent, what your nominator has to say about you, and then finally how you present yourself and respond in the interview stage of the selection committee. How does the committee think that you would perform in public presentation and citizen engagement? Will you be able to create enthusiasm for the program and carry out the responsibilities of the position? And then finally, the letter of intent gives the poet a chance to talk about their own goals and objectives, and the committee will be asked to weigh and measure and think about what the different candidates said in terms of their goals for this one-year program. Are they realistic? Are they achievable? Are they relevant to the program and to our city? So EC3 is committed to accessibility, inclusion, and equity. And we try to think about that going across a number of different planes and platforms, certainly in terms of BIPOC artists, people with disabilities, artists who identify as deaf. We have a number of ways of supporting different people and ensuring an equitable adjudication and assessment process. particularly on the question of accessibility to the program in terms of the nomination process. Again, please don't be shy. Call us. We will do everything we can to accommodate what any challenges or barriers you're facing in terms of stepping into the program. Yeah, I think I've covered all of those. Okay, here are the key dates. The most important one, May 25th. The nominations are due. And then it will take us a while to make sure everybody's submitted everything required. We're pretty generous about giving people time to hand in things that they might have missed, but don't count on it. And then we'll have to get all the material to the selection committee, give them time to read everything, make sure all the links are working, that they can view the video material. They'll do an adjudication, then we'll have the interview process, and then we'll make the announcement on June 23rd. So it's a very tight turnaround time. And the term begins on the 30th. And I think that I send you, if you're selected as the Poet Laureate, a direct deposit form, and then the first installment of your $1,000 fee will come to you from the city of Peterborough. And there will be some sort of an announcement event. That's good. Gabe? This is a great section. You'll probably want to revisit it on our website, the general tips and tricks for making a nomination. Check the deadline, start early, start earlier, start now. And I believe that's a phrase coined by the inimitable Kate Story. And you can see here a beautiful artwork by Sue Lily Dixon that was part of the postcode tour project for Arts Week Shift. Thanks, Gabe. Read all the guidelines. Read everything in the information and guidelines document, even though it's wordy and boring. So easy to miss something important that could make the difference between being selected or not selected. It's going to be up to you to a certain extent to guide your nominator. Don't be shy about asking someone to nominate you. We have had a couple of calls from people who want to nominate artists. Interestingly, they were people who seemed to be shy to approach the artist. So the nomination has to come from both of you. And this is a work by Bethany LeBlanc that was another Arts Week Shift project curated by Hannah Keating. It was called Postcode Tour. And I think this is a shot from a Wendy Trussler work from Arts Week 2018, maybe, I'm not sure. That's what you see in the background. That's Wendy etching onto wood with a tool, burning tool. Answer the actual questions in the nomination form. Be specific. I think that's something that we see a lot in grant applications in general, and we could imagine that happening again in the nomination process. Really take time out and make sure that your nominator is well aware of the assessment criteria and that you think about the assessment criteria when you write your letter of intent. Oh, 2016, okay. I think this might be Jen Cole and somebody else dancing at Peterborough Square as part of
Bennett.
Is it Bennett Badukian?
Yeah, I
And
believe
Bennett,
so.
partly, I think it was a piece called Something Happened at the Mall by Kate Story and Ryan Kerr. Sorry about what happened at the mall. That was Arts Week 2018. Fantastic moving piece that went through the ground floor there, the basement really of Peterborough Square. think about this application a little bit like an artwork that you do in your role as a poet or a spoken word artist. You're going to need more than one draft probably. Don't be shy to ask somebody to look at your nomination letter or your nominator's letter. Other people see things that you don't, in my experience. Gabe, thank God, looks at everything I do before it goes out and always finds things that I don't and brings that eye of the third party to the table. I think this is somebody manning this, I don't know who this is, manning the poetry cart.
Kayla Fraser.
Thank you. Oh, there's John. There's Kayla, John and Ziza and other people, including Kayla there, have been part of the poetry cart at Arts Week and often at Art Loves Pride for many, many years. Yeah, and do pay attention to the word count. And make sure you save everything, and take a printed copy as well. And this is my personal advice. Look at everything in print before you send it in. I think that we read things on paper differently than we read them on the screen. And I think this is Sean. Theater on King, this was part of a curated program of spoken word poetry that was part of Arts Week Shift. Be clear and concise, avoid jargon and art speak. Thanks, Gabe. And I think that's Mountain Muriel there with Washboard Hank at a Porchapalooza event at Arts Week. Yep, 2016. Yeah, get help, get feedback. I think the strongest applications I ever see when it's for a grant come from people that have had, again, someone else took a look at it, work together with your nominator, make it a team effort, and get somebody to proofread and double check the checklist. So proofreading, you know, lots of people argue that visual artists shouldn't expect to be writers. I don't know how people feel about that kind of thing with regard to spoken word and print page poetry, but I can tell you in my 35 years of experience, juries will get tired and irritated if there's a lot of spelling and typographical errors in what you hand in. And really look at that checklist. It's so important that you go over it. Checklists make it easier for you not have to back up and hand in supplementary material. And we might not have very much time for you to do that. That's Opal and the gang from the Circus Arts Academy with a project called the Flying Canoe, and they're actually at the Canoe Museum there. Did you use the checklist? Is the information accurate and up to date? Make sure that you hand in the publication history or the CV that has everything on it that you want the selection committee to know about. I don't know who these people are, hanging out in a backyard somewhere. If you are deaf or hard of hearing, we can assist with your application. Email us. We're here to help. Okay, there are questions in the chat room. Angela, the logo can't be changed right now, but I think it's a good question, and I'd like to check in with the city about what position they have on the use of.
You should read out the question.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Gabe.
Yeah. Angela Hibbs asked, can the logo be changed to say Peterborough No Good Yuanong, Poet Laureate? Is what was being spoken about. Yep.
Jeanette is mentioning, as I did, that many cultures and different, for millennia, people have had a storyteller. In pre-print times, everything was passed down through storytelling and through elders and leaders, a town crier and John Oliver type. Jeanette, I'm not sure what you mean by the Arts Council with a question mark.
Oh, you said Arts Council, and it was probably just a little slip, so never mind.
Okay.
I think at that moment, Sue was referring to EC3.
I see.
Sorry.
It was about who was overseeing the selection process, if I remember correctly.
Ah, okay, thanks, John. Matthew's asking, would there be consideration to have both maybe in the future? We'll have to see. Okay, we have some nice conversation back and forth between Jeanette and Matthew there that I don't think we need to.
Yeah, I think the next question is also for Matthew McLeod. RE printed support materials, is it possible to submit in hard copy form versus digital? I can answer this kind of on a technical level because the selection committee will be meeting via Zoom, won't be kind of in the room at the same time. It's going to be really difficult for print materials to be shared around so that everyone can see them. So we are only accepting digital materials. You can submit them in we can talk about ways to make that process easier. But I just yeah, I can't see a way just practically to make it work since the committee is never going to be in the same room. So sharing around materials is going to be a challenge with COVID.
If you're really having a challenge because you don't have a scanner, let us know and we'll see what we can do with that.
Yeah.
Answering Jeanette's question about being part of the selection committee, EC3 puts the selection committee together. It's almost all finished for this year, but Jeanette will keep you in mind for another year.
Yeah, those were all the questions that are in the chat. If anyone else has any questions, I mean, you can write them in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourself and just join in the conversation. Yeah.
Anybody else have questions that you didn't put in the chat room? Don't be shy.
And of course, we include our email there. Also up above, like higher in the chat, I included a link to the full program guidelines. I can put that in again. We've basically gone over almost everything during this meeting, but if you have any questions, you can take a look at that and certainly send us an email or give us a call at any time. We've got the contact section on the EC3 website, so you can get in touch with us there. That's got phone number and email if anything pops up. And we're also on, Facebook and Instagram and all those things if you want to chat with us there.
Hey there. I guess I had a quick question. I was just wondering if there was any considerations or exceptions being made, given that it has been a lot more difficult to do a lot of these certain, like for the eligibility criteria, for example, says just for spoken word specifically, participation on a spoken word team, including touring and competing for at least 2 years. And Peterborough, for example, we didn't obviously have that this year just because of COVID and everything, but would have 100% have joined for the second year if that was available. I'm just wondering if there's like any, they consider that or.
Sorry, is this Sarah talking?
Yep.
Okay, Sarah, if you want to give me a phone call, I'll just talk through your practice a little bit with you and see if we can figure out a way around that. I think it's a good question. It's just that if we're going to make some exceptions, we'll have to make them public for everybody. So I'm going to give you my number. It's 705.
Yep.
749 9101. And John, maybe you and I can talk about that. We could maybe replace a competition with other performances that have happened.
It's also worth noting that within the spoken word eligibility, it's a combination of any of the following. It doesn't require that you've done all of them.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
that we have to find out a way if we make it possible for one person to make it possible for everyone and to make sure that everybody knows about it.
And it is a good point. It's worth discussing just because
Yeah.
when the criteria were written, they were written pre-COVID and about a year or two before COVID. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Good question, Sarah,
question.
thanks. Yes, Matthew, confidentiality. Matthew is asking about the confidentiality of support material and nominations, and the nominees' letter of intent all kept very confidential, and the selection committee will be admonished over and over and over again that they are to keep those contents confidential and the contents of the proceedings confidential.
There is a discussion of confidentiality in the program guidelines on the website. That's one thing that we didn't go over in detail during this presentation, but there are a couple paragraphs at least about that issue. Yeah. Angela Hibbs is asking, will the Poet Laureate be on the selection committee after their year of service?
That's certainly something we'll ask them to do. We can't make them, but that is a tradition with Poet Laureates, which we thought was a great one. So they will be invited to. Yep. Anything else? Okay, well, I want to say thank you again for everyone coming tonight. Thank you to the city of Peterborough for their financial support of the program, and to all of the people, especially I want to give a shout out to John Hedderwick, who helped EC3 put together all of the program guidelines and information and muddled through all of that picky stuff and went backwards and forwards. And we always try to put ourselves in the artist's shoes and put ourselves in the nominator's shoes to come up with material that's going to work and be fair and straightforward. And he has been a wonderful colleague
Thanks, Sue.
from the very beginning. Thanks as always to the inimitable Gabe Pollock, to our incredible board represented here tonight by Alicia. Good luck to all of you. Looking forward to seeing you either virtually or in person very soon, either in your capacity as a Poet Laureate or as an artist presenting your work. Thank you for all your support of the arts and your hard work.
Yeah, thank
Take
you very much,
care,
everyone.
stay well, stay safe, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sue.
Bye.
Thank you,
Gabe.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Gabe.
Bye.
Bye, Gabe.
Bye.